I'm not Erik Poirier. So Erik and I have decided to switch spots, and he's going to be a panelist and get to relax a little bit. And I'm going to be moderating this session. So my name is Sheryl Staub-French. I'm a professor of civil engineering and the Associate Dean of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in the Faculty of Applied Science at the University of British Columbia. I'm also director of the BIM Topics Lab and have been doing research on BIM and collaboration and innovation in the construction sector for over 25 years now. And it's a real pleasure to be moderating this panel today. So we're really going to be talking about what's next for Canada. We've been learning a lot over the last 3 days, so I think there's a lot to talk about. The way this session is going to work is it's going to be rapid fire presentations. So every person will have 10 minutes and only 10 minutes. I'm looking at the panelists. And then we'll have time at the end for a panel discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first speaker to come up. You know him well, Dr. Erik Poirier, who is VP of BIM Quebec. He's on the board of directors for buildingSMART. He's a professor at ETS, and he has been instrumental in putting this whole conference on. So a warm welcome for Erik.
So no, I am not a professional MC, as you may have guessed, although I've been having a lot of fun. Thank you, Sheryl, and thank you for all the panelists on this session. So rapidly, I have already a minute and a half down. So I'm here to present a report that just was published in June, and actually now the Francophone, the French translation has just been published also. It was commissioned by the Canadian Standards Association. Myself, Professor Sheryl Staub-French, Mark Whitell, and Arash Shahi from Eco Innovation Labs, and Nadi Dadmer, the student, were the authors, and we had a project advisory panel of the people that are here. So here's the French version. The objectives of the study were to develop a digital transformation framework to structure the standards, guidelines, and other resources to support BIM adoption and implementation in Canada, and to articulate and prioritize these resources. So we were looking at what are the knowledge resources that are needed to move Canada ahead. So we were talking a lot of today and yesterday around all these standards and everything, but how do we prioritize them? How do we structure them? Secondary objectives included, validating current industry challenges, reviewing existing initiatives, not reinventing the wheel. That's something that's been discussed a lot. Discussing their adoption and adaptation and where specific need was uncovered. Proposing avenues for development. So it was really a research and development roadmap for CSA, but we used it to structure the knowledge resources in Canada. Methodology, so for data collection approaches, so state-of-the-art review, we reviewed 630 publications pertaining to BIM from everywhere. We have that database, and we are going to make it public. It's now in an Airtable somewhere, and I have to figure out how to share it. So that's going to be happening. So there's a couple of resources that do that. We got that up to 630. We did interviews with individuals from across Canada, the UK, the US, and Australia. We did a survey through the University of Toronto and buildingSMART Canada. We had 171 responses logged between November 2021 and 2022, and 2 workshops to validate and prioritize the results. Rapidly, so we've been talking about digital transformation over the past 3 days, just to try to put those in context, that digital transformation is the process through which economies and entire society systems are reconfigured. So digitalization is part of that, and digitization is that foundation. So the way that we structured the findings is looking at, how do we actually drive this transformation? How do we structure it? So always starting with drivers and opportunities in mind. The challenge is to actually go and get those opportunities. What frameworks exist and what frameworks do we need to implement? What are the strategies and roadmap to operationalize the frameworks? The actual implementation and the evaluation process, all of that, around the digital transformation governance and having some strong governance there. So rapidly, I think we've heard these over the last 3 days. What are the key drivers for digital transformation? Climate crisis, post-pandemic recovery, housing crisis, aging infrastructure, labor and skill shortages in an underperforming industry. So if we need a reason to change, 6 are there are many others. We looked at opportunities. So digital transformation is a large concept. BIM fits somewhere in there. Digital twins fit somewhere in there. But there's a bunch of other opportunities to transform the construction industry. We looked at them, transforming what's built, how it's built, and how it's used and maintained, looking at it from an organizational, process, and technology perspective. So articulating the different opportunities. And of course, data is pretty much at the center of all of these elements. So a couple of findings from the report that you'll see. The report's a couple of 100 pages long, so there's a lot of information in it. But I wanted to bring attention to a couple of statistics from the survey. Should BIM implementation be mandated and supported by the government? 62% agree, 24% neither agree, and then we have a small percentage that don't agree. So strong majority that supports some form of government mandate for BIM in Canada. Then, are standards important, and do we need resources to support that? A bit of a question, but strong support for standardization and resources. Then the notion of open BIMs. 59% of people agree. 40% of people don't know. So that's a red flag saying, well, we don't know. And this was part of the intent of having this event, getting people aware of buildingSMART Open BIM in Canada. We mapped all these challenges for digital transformation back to 3 areas: lack of consistent demand by clients, lack of appropriate skills and competencies, and incompatibility of capabilities and workflows across built asset supply and value chains. So those were the 3 challenge areas that we really focused on as a response to these key drivers in trying to drive digital transformation. And so if we look at these and articulate these responses to these challenges, it's creating and systematizing demand for BIM. Lack of demand is a huge issue. Upskilling industry stakeholders across industry segments, and then structuring practice and harmonizing capabilities across supply and value chains. So what knowledge do we need? Where is it applied? And how is it applied? And within that, sort of an operational framework for BIM. So once we've established that framework or that framing, we wanted to look at what are the different challenges within those categories, and you have them here. They're articulated in the report, and I won't read them. All that to say also then is that as we get into the response saying we need to create and formalize knowledge, we sort of ask, okay, well, how is knowledge around digital transformation and BIM implementation currently formalized, and how important is it? And so if you look at on the right-hand side, on your left-hand side, standards, guidelines, best practices, manuals, contractor agreements, most people thought they were either very important or important. So there's a clear need for these resources. And then we looked at what's being developed. So on the right-hand side, we're looking at, do you have process standards and guidelines, data standards, BIM object standards, et cetera, et cetera. Where are they coming from? Do you have them? And the large majority of organizations are doing them either internally or are they not doing them at all. So that sort of is another red flag saying we're recreating the wheel across these different organizations. Let's try to structure this. So you saw the middle, so creating demand, upskilling industry, and harmonizing capabilities. So what are the resources we're building that framework on? And so we articulated basically you'll recognize the 19650 approach across the top. So information use, requirements, delivery planning, delivery. We also looked at the information architecture. So how is information structured, and accessibility. Across the y-axis, we're looking at policy, procurement, partnerships, people, practice, products, and platforms. So a little fancier version of the technology organization process, a bit more exploded. What we've done in the report is identified, and through the workshops with the industry experts, we looked at, okay, let's start using this framework to articulate where are the resources that we need to develop or existing that we can adapt, and where are they located? How do we position them in the framework? So we looked at policy documents, procurement documents, and et cetera, at which stage in the information lifecycle. And of course, so in the report, you'll see there's a bunch of elements, bunch of documents. All of these have, or most of these have precedents, have existing resources through ISO, through CEN, through BSI, through other standards bodies. And so the idea then we have at the end, a prioritization, identification of what are the resources, where are they coming from, what are their priorities, what are the precedents we can build on to really try to formalize and advance this question in Canada. So that's it, 10 minutes. Thank you.
Summarizing a 200-page report in 10 minutes, I think that's pretty impressive. And I think this report and all these frameworks are a great place for us to start this conversation about what's next in Canada. So thanks for starting us off there, Eric. So next up, we have Arash Shahi. He is co-founder and CEO of Eco Innovation Lab. I had the privilege of working with Arash on that CSA project. And today he's going to be talking about the OneOntario project. So Arash, thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. We've heard the topic of today's presentation was what's next in Canada. And I want to talk about the municipal space and development approvals in specific. What do we see in future of development approvals in Canada? We've heard from Quebec, province of Quebec. We've heard from Oakville, Kingston, Calgary. There's a lot of work that's being done across the country. And there's a few key messages that I just want to relay and really replay for you today. When we started ECO a couple of years ago, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And at the time, I was at the University of Toronto. I still feel like I'm an academic at heart, even though I've come to the industry. The reason we started ECO was because we saw that over the next couple of years, the industry, AEC industry specifically, and the intersection of AEC with the government, they have to catch up on decades of digitization work that we haven't done. Because of pandemic, we were basically forced to catch up. So it needs to happen, and that we need to bring in the private, public, and the academic sectors together to get it done. Because none of those sectors by themselves can really do what needs to be done. So that was the motivation of why we started our journey. We see the future of municipalities, smart cities, obviously, but mostly working from a city information model, where we think that going forward, our cities need to have access to the digital twins, and they need to be using that for all sort of different applications, anything from city land use planning to council meetings to emergency planning, simulations, asset management, smart cities application. Everything needs to be done from a city information model and digital twin. So that's the future. When we think the pathway to that future is development approvals, because that's the only opportunity we really have to get the information we need from the design community to populate the digital twin for the municipalities. We believe that the future in Canada going forward, we're going to be shifting from a decentralized system to a centralized CDE or portal CDE, where we all work from the single source of truth, whether that's a design community, or the regulatory system. We think that what we're going to be seeing going forward, and it was interesting because we had this presentation in Oakville, and right after us, Calgary presented, and we were talking about the same concepts, and we hadn't really talked to each other about it. But this whole concept of micro reviews, instead of having a major review application, that seems to be where we're moving towards with our municipalities. And the only platform that can really allow for that is BIM. So we think that BIM and OpenBIM specifically is going to have a role to play within that portal environment. Going forward, we think that using automation is going to be a source of adding capacity to our municipalities. So doing code checks, automatic code checks to increase the quality of submissions, and also using BIM for the review process at municipalities. We think that we need to go there. We know that the province of Quebec has BIM mandates in place or BIM guidelines. We know that Alberta is following closely. We know that Ontario is nowhere to be found. But at some point, we're going to need some federal support and federal leadership. And we have NRC presenting soon, so we're going to have some hard questions for them. But point being that we need our federal government at the table to take leadership and support the municipalities. We can't leave municipalities on their own. For one thing, they don't have jurisdiction over the entire process. For the other thing, there are just too many of them. So we can't really push everything downstream. We need to actually push it up and get some leadership from the top. So we think that that's where the future is for Canada. Also, the different applications, we talked about that yesterday. I don't want to repeat the whole presentation. But looking at simulations, being able to run simulation as a city level, I think that's going to be a very key change that's going to happen in our municipal review process going forward. Being able to actually run all sort of different scenarios. We were talking about just in this conference, talking about active zoning in a sense that if you have a particular zoning in one area and it's not being used, can we change the zoning, give it to some other area, use that capacity? Otherwise, all that work can only be done with the city information model. So we think that that's basically, again, the question was, where is Canada? What's next for Canada? We think that this is where we need to go in our municipalities. Having access to data is a very interesting element that I think is missing from our municipal space. The example was given today about the iWatch as a source of digital twin. That was a really good example because I don't think our municipalities fully understand what is the extent of data that could be available to them. So I think having a different mindset as to, okay, what kind of data can I actually ask for and what can I use that data for is going to be a key differentiator going forward. Energy efficiency, there's going to be a lot of energy efficiency conversations coming up in the coming years, and we need systems like this to be in place to be able to respond to that. Overall, our one answer to the future of development approvals in Canada is basically a centralized approach. That's how every other major jurisdiction has done it. We think that we can follow the best practices that exist internationally. OneOntario is our platform that we are testing in Ontario. We did get some federal support behind it from CMHC. So we're going to go ahead and develop this platform. We believe that this is the way to go for BIM submissions to municipality, having that centralized approach. And there was a few other topics that was discussed in the conference last couple of days. Model as a legal document, that concept was discussed. A number of US states are already using that model. Others are coming on that model. So there's really no reason that we can't do that here in Canada. Use model as a legal document. That's going to address a lot of challenges that we've identified over the years of model sharing and what happens with responsibilities. All of those questions have been answered. The good news, I guess the only takeaway that I would like you to have is that everything we've talked about has been done before, right? Other jurisdictions have figured out all the challenges that you can possibly think of because it is being done. So now we're in a good position to push forward with that. There is also, I want to highlight the fact that the role that the academic community is going to play in this space going forward. Not just because I was an academic myself, but in the panel today, you got 3 of the top academics in Canada presenting to you what they're doing on BIM. And we believe in that. We believe that the academic group is going to have a major role to play. And we need to work together. There's a lot of silos going on, and that doesn't limit just to the industry or government. In academia, we have some of the same problems. So we are looking at ways to actually work with academic partners across the country. So one of the projects that we are involved with is a project with MyTax. We don't have the final approval on that yet, but we are hoping for that to come in. So Sheryl and Eric, who presented, and Dr. Suman Fai, who's going to present next, we've come together and we've basically put together a 5-year plan for AI-enabled digital twins for automation in the regulatory systems in Canada. And that project, once funded, will basically lay the foundation for all the work that needs to be done in terms of BIM submission, open CDEs. It's really up to us as a community to decide what that future is going to look like. Are we going to rely on out-of-the-box software solution providers, or are we actually going to get together and develop an open CDE? And the answer to that is only on who's going to be at the table, right? We have the academics who are here. We have the private sector who's willing to help, and we're looking for government players to come to the table and work together to get that done. With that, 10 minutes, thank you very much. And
thank you, Arash. Really important to highlight, well, the criticality of the municipal sector. I know in Vancouver it can take years to get permits through, so a huge part of the barriers. Also glad you brought up this need for better industry, academia, and government collaboration. We'll touch on that again with the panel. So next up, we have Stephen Fye, professor from Carleton University and director of the SIMS Lab, and we have Julie Ivanoff, research team lead with SIMS, who will give a bit of a campus lens to this, but reimagining maybe Canada's digital future. Thank you.
I'm going to stick to my notes so I don't go over time. Being an academic, Sheryl already warned me to. So good afternoon. We're very, very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to discuss our research initiative entitled Imagining Canada's Digital Twin. I've had the pleasure of being the director of Carleton Immersive Media Studio now for 15 years. And when I became the director of SIMS in 2007, I focused our research on the application of BIM for heritage conservation and architectural rehabilitation. This was a relatively obscure niche at the time, and I was openly criticized by both the heritage community and some BIM advocates. In fact, I was called crazy more than once and in public. We were told that the existing tools were not made for that purpose, and those who said that were right. So what we did is we figured out new ways to use those tools. The first time that I presented our BIM work at an international conference on cultural heritage, there were 2 presentations on BIM, myself and Maurice Murphy from the Dublin Institute of Technology. And Maurice was the person who coined the term HBIM, if you're familiar with that, heritage BIM. Today, that same conference has multiple sessions dedicated specifically to HBIM. Our work at SIMS is varied in scale and cultural significance, from one-room churches and synagogues in Saskatchewan to the Parliament Hill National Historic Site in Ottawa. We've also had the opportunity to explore applications of asset information modeling at a wide range of scales, from 6 square kilometers to 45,000 square kilometers, all of Eastern Ontario. Our work on digital twins is our most recent endeavor. My colleague Nico Arellano presented the Carleton Digital Campus yesterday, and we are also involved with Northcrest Developments and the Canada Lands Corporation in the creation of a twin for the redevelopment of the Downsview Airport lands in Toronto. We have learned some important lessons along the way. For example, people don't like to share data. I'm sure you've all heard that one. And the majority of people in the AECO are averse to change, digital and otherwise. But we've become pretty good at convincing people, not by telling them what to do, but by showing them why it is to their benefit. A couple of years ago, our work brought us to a new question. What could a national digital twin of Canada be? Our research suggests, as Arash just mentioned, that most cities are working on digital representations. Some even call them twins, or city information models of their urban environments, and they are publishing open data. What is missing currently is a structure that could bring all of these urban representations together. And what about the space between urban centers and the infrastructure that connects us all? Interurban networks like electricity, communications, and transportation technologies. In March of 2020, we were fortunate to receive funding from the New Frontiers in Research Fund to develop this question further. For those of you who don't know, the New Frontiers in Research Fund is a federal government funding program that supports high-risk, high-reward research. Imagining Canada's digital twin is an exploration of the idea of a digital twin for Canada. I believe it is the first national initiative to address the opportunities, challenges, and responsibilities involved in developing a twin at a national scale in Canada. And we've identified 2 objectives for our first round of funding: to build a research consortium of academic, Indigenous, not-for-profit, public and private partners that represent local and regional networks. Secondly, to develop a digital twin prototype of the Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto corridor using a simulated distributed server network. We believe that ICDT, Canada's digital twin, is an opportunity to develop a leadership role for Canada's architecture, engineering, construction industry in the integration of innovative digital technologies. So right now, our goal is not to resolve the question of a digital twin for Canada, but to determine the plausibility of the concept, the level of effort required to see it realized, and to establish a national group that is posed to move forward in that realization. We are here in Montreal to make friends, develop partnerships as we move forward with applications for additional funding. And with that, I would like to introduce my colleague and research lead on the Imagining Canada's Digital Twin, Julie Adnoff.
Thank you, Steve. When I first heard about digital twins almost 3 years ago, the concept of a national digital twin sounded ambitious, but not impossible. Britain's national digital twin was already in development, and that's an initiative that has government support. So if the government supports it, it can't be that outrageous, right? Now, Britain is a much smaller country geographically compared to Canada. So imagining Canada's digital twin is very ambitious. Canada is an enormous landmass with people inhabiting even the most remote areas so remote that they don't have internet access. Only 85% of Canadians have reliable broadband service, and this is a first world country where people are without internet access. Now, imagining a digital twin of Canada, now that's ambitious. Ambitious, but not impossible, because people all over the world are connecting to each other. And in 2025, all of Canada will have internet access. So areas that were once isolated can participate in the World Wide Web. And this is no small feat. If this can be achieved, then why not a digital twin of Canada? Back in the 60s, when researchers at DARPA were imagining the internet, they were thinking of a means to connect with other researchers, tap into those great minds across all of the US, and they knew that they were there. They just didn't know how to reach them. So they wanted to share ideas and collaborate, but they didn't know how this could be achieved. But they could imagine there's going to be some sort of system in which they could do so, and they could imagine the incredible potential of what a networked world could provide. So it started small. Just a few computers and a few research facilities connected to each other, and they had to use the technology and infrastructure they had at the time, which was computers the size of fridges and physical telephone lines, but they found a way. That group of people who shared that vision grew, and with more participants to contribute, they were able to achieve this goal. So we're here today with computers in our pockets and talking about digital twins of the built environment. It's difficult to imagine how crazy the concept of the internet must have been 60 years ago. And all it took was a small group of people to start it, and those people who shared that vision to make it a reality. Now, our goal is not to resolve the question of a digital twin for Canada, but to determine its feasibility. Yesterday, Nico Ariano, my colleague, demoed the Carleton University campus digital twin. That's what you're seeing in the background now. This is what we've developed at SIMS, and it's a browser-based platform built with open source tools. And it can display right now, this current model of the campus is over 50 IFCs with BIM data, geolocated, all through a web browser, so anyone can access it. We want everyone in Canada to be able to use it. So your location, technology, or understanding of it, or budget shouldn't be a barrier. 63% of working Canadians work for businesses that employ less than 100 people. So we want to make sure that these small to medium enterprises can access this digital twin. We're adding all of the models that we've developed and worked with at SIMS into this digital twin, and that covers Eastern Ontario, including the National Capital Region, and more. And we're plugging as many models as we can into this platform. We've started, but we need help, because we can't build this alone. No one can. And for imagining Canada's digital twin, we wonder, what would be required to see it realized? And to do this, we need to find those groups that share this goal and work together to move forward in this realization. So we've been talking a lot about collaboration, and I invite you to join us and participate. If you have models, if you want to see what we've been working on, and if you want to contribute to this digital twin, a digital twin of Canada, I think, will be built regardless, whether it's here, whether it's with us, but why not explore where it can go and help us understand where it needs to go and what it should be. So I hope that you'll join us. Thank you very much. Oh.
Wow. Well, thank you. Really, I think it's going to really, it just tells the story, doesn't it? So next up, I'm really happy to introduce Farzad Jalaei from NRC. So you'll get a very different perspective from a governmental entity talking about new initiatives on digital construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheryl. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farzad, and I'm research officer at National Research Council. It was quite inspiring, just having, being in this event for past 3 days and seeing people talking about data interoperability, BIM, open BIM, and I saw this approach is kind of acknowledged by some provinces like Quebec, and also practiced by some federal government agencies like Public Services and Procurement Canada. I'm here on behalf of NRC to kind of announce our a new initiative as NRC platform to decarbonize the construction sector at scale. As you probably, this is a repeated sentence, but you probably know, Canada government is committed to go towards the net zero carbon target in 2050. I'm not sure if it's going to be fulfilled, but this is something that is committed, and also trying to get into lowering the GHG emission by 40 to 45% by 2030 compared to what has been done in 2005. So this initiative is kind of going towards this decarbonizing the construction sector, and what we need to to shift this paradigm is to having access to right tools and skilled resources to be in place. We need to we require to wide scale adoption of new technologies, and we need updated practices and regulations across the industry. This is what has been discussed in all these 3 days and even today. So our main area and primary thrust is at the middle, which is advancing the low carbon regulatory framework to create a center for technology deployment and regulatory framework in the middle. And it is supported by two challenge programs. One is what has been discussed before this by buildingSMART France about life cycle assessment. We are creating the Center of Excellence for Life Cycle Assessment. We have started this practice by an initiative called Low Carbon Assets Through Life Cycle Assessment, shortened for LCA Square, and we have published the whole building LCA guideline for Canada specifically, and it is released last year, so you can download it for free and see how it is adopted from the ISO standard and EN. And it specified the regulations for Canada specifically for how to do the whole building life cycle assessment thing. And the third thrust or enabling thrust or challenge program is about the productivity through digitization. And this is the area that I'm going to talk about it today, like in these 10 minutes. This challenge program named like Solutions to Increase in Construction Sector Productivity Through Digitization. Like the challenge is to lower the construction time cost and also like improving the innovation potential and productivity through like by like deploying these low carbon practices into new projects and retrofitting construction projects. So the key outputs, as it's mentioned here, is to kind of like enabling digital solutions for low carbon and low embodied carbon purposes, and like coming up with the digital tools and platforms for permitting, compliance, and virtual inspection. This is like 7 years project initiative. It's probably it's the first time I'm announcing this, and you will going to hear about this like many more times from now on, because we just got the approval from Treasury Board of Canada to secure like around like $190 million project for the whole scale. And this this challenge program is kind of like the investment of like around $10 million per year for next 7 years. So as the short and like intermediate outcome, we are going to come up with this kind of like digital enabled, low carbon, low embodied carbon solution, and digital tools for permitting purposes, as the challenges are mentioned already by Arash. And for the long term, like we are going towards the performance-based codes and like bringing in the language of embodied carbon solutions, and like the like kind of like place the interoperability platform through digitization into performance-based codes as well, and transforming the practices into like the new like they call it changing game of like digital solutions through modular construction and advanced manufacturing as well. The ideal outcome of this project is kind of like going towards the digitalized construction solutions, and like kind of standardizing and harmonizing the data exchange format between different disciplines. Also, like we are trying to kind of like adopt these standards and guidelines by industry and enhance the productivity through optimizing between GHG, cost, time, and other aspects that are very important in terms of delivering the projects. So I like this picture. This is kind of like captured by some sources which are trying to kind of like cover the whole aspects of construction 4.0. This is kind of like how the BIM and common data environment are at the middle, and like trying to connect with the digital and computing tools in the at the top, and like it is kind of like connected to the construction stage through like using some cyber physical systems to kind of like translate the digital signals into actual actions, and also like going toward advanced manufacturing through 3D printing, IoT, and like modular construction. All stuff here could be sit into this digitization initiative somehow, and that's why like we kind of like identify 3 pillars for this initiative and for this challenge program, which is, one is about the sustainability, what should be done in terms of lowering the embodied carbon, going towards the performance-based codes, what we should do in terms of interoperability through enabling the AI-based solution, digital permitting, and even like harmonizing, standardizing the data exchange between different platforms in digital ecosystems, and how we can move forward to the construction side in terms of enhancing the advanced manufacturing and like going towards the offsite construction. And of course, it also has some impacts on lowering the carbon and GHG as well. Right now, we are at the stage of creating the master projects under each pillar. You can see here, like as the logic model, we have like the 3 pillars. We are identifying the master project and the sub-projects under each of them. By end of this month and the month of November, we are launching some workshops to bring in academia and industry thought leaders to be invited in our workshops to learn more about the whole initiative, how we are moving towards the performance-based codes, and what we are going to do with each challenge program. And so we are sitting at the middle of between academia, industry, to kind of like scaling up what has been like the outcome of the digital outcome of the academia and science into the industry. So feel free to reach me out or even like talk to my colleague Jason here if you want to be in our invitee list and learn more about our initiative. And that would be quite like welcome from me, like to you guys, like to participate in our workshops and express your interest to collaborate with us. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to squeeze through here. Thank you, Farzad. Very exciting to hear about that new initiative and actual significant investments in digitizing the construction sector. So thank you. We now have 3 members from buildingSMART, so you're going to get a wide variety of updates here. So the first is Steve Mahaney. He's VDC manager for Ellis Dawn, and he's the Canada Affiliates Network lead. Claudia Cortsatorto, Vice President, buildingSMART Canada. You heard from her earlier today, and Bill Moore, President of buildingSMART Canada. So please take the stage.
Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. I know it's been a long few days for many people. I just wanted to mention that, you know, changing Canada's built environment and transforming it requires innovation. Innovation requires calculated risk-taking, and I'm doing that right now. I know this session's running like a Swiss watch right now, and at the risk of upsetting our facilitator, I wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge the efforts of Erik Poirier to help us put on this conference. Thank you, Eric. So, back on script.
Excellent. Am I on? Yeah, okay, great. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the updates that we're underway for the BIM contract appendix. So way back in 2014, IBC, the Institute for BIM in Canada, released the IBC contract appendix for BIM, or the contract language documents. This was modeled after the AIA documents, the 202 Building Information Modeling Protocol from the US. Since then, you know, we've noticed that the adoption of the contract appendix was lacking, and noted in 3 of the BIM reports that have gone out in the past few years, that participants have commented that 80 to 85% of models are shared with members outside of their organization. That 57% of those are with 3 or more participants. I know, or parties. I know that it wasn't captured in the report, but I, from experience, know that usually instead of using a BIM contract appendix, there's a lot of disclaimers being used. So here's my model, but beware or don't use it. Use at your own risk, that kind of language. So 45% though of those participants believe that legal issues is an industry-wide barrier to BIM implementation. So, you know, of course, that goes back to the BIM contract appendix, but only 15% were even aware that we even had an IBC contract appendix for BIM. So clearly lots of work to do. You know, we look at these stats, we already could see that the adoption was low. And so we've put a working group together. So IBC, buildingSMART Canada has since assumed management of the IBC contract appendix since that board had been sunset a number of years ago. And so this working group, a small working group, has been working on, you know, what were the issues with the appendix, what can we do differently to have better adoption, and, you know, has reviewed the sections and has made some suggested modifications. So just a couple of the big kind of moves here. From the IBC contract appendix that we had in 2014, you know, there was a section, the protocol, that was part of the BIM execution plan, and there was content within the appendix that was repeated in the execution plan. So there was some overlap and some connections there that were hard to manage within like industry. So the big move here is that we have, oh, I think we're missing something on that slide. Okay, sorry. The principal agreement and then the BIM appendix, of course, together, and all pointing to the BIM execution plan. So again, we're trying to make a better connection between those two documents so that there's not conflicting information and they're not at odds with one another. The other, you know, important element is that the contract appendix align with our other contracts, right? With the principal agreements that are exist within Canada. We've been talking with the RIC. Again, they're very interested in getting better alignment with the contract appendix so that we can use the models appropriately. And of course, we're also trying to align with the language and the terms and the framework that has been identified in ISO 19650. So those are some of the big moves that we've made. Again, this is a small working group. What I'm presenting here is basically a call to action. We'd love to get more participation in reviewing it, in commenting on where we've gone with the appendix. Again, you know, this is all in an effort to help the industry. Let's move away from the disclaimers. Let's just agree on how we're going to use our models and what the BIM uses are, and link it into our contracts properly. So if you're interested in participating in the reviewing and the working group that's underway right now, please email us, and you know, we're happy to hear from more people in the industry. So I'll pass it over to Steve to talk about the affiliates.
I got one here.
I'll take that one.
Afternoon, everyone. So just a little update on the affiliates. We've had some communication with the affiliates over the last couple of months and have developed a strategic plan for moving forward with them. The four key principles of that strategic plan are unity, leadership, support, and identity. So unity, having a common message across Canada with our local BIM communities. Leadership, recognizing that our affiliate leaders, our affiliate leadership lead their communities. Support for and from buildingSMART Canada for the affiliates, as well as the supporting network. And finally, identity, recognizing that there are local differences and that the affiliates are the best people to speak to that. So we asked the affiliates to provide just a little bit of background content. So I'd like to present that now.
Calgary BIM Community is Canada's longest standing BIM organization, celebrating our 18th year in 2022 and with more than 500 members. The organization's origins were founded by grassroots technology enthusiasts meeting bi-monthly to share BIM experiences and challenges. That has since matured to an organization focused around digitalizing the built asset industry and is currently represented by the complete asset lifecycle stakeholder chain. We are fortunate to have the support of some important sponsors, including Autodesk, Smart Technologies, SolidCAD, and Imagineit. Prior to the pandemic, the organization met monthly at Smart Technologies World Headquarters and offered a variety of meeting formats, from local project case studies, technology presentations, workshops, and the Calgary BIM Health Check. With the onset of the pandemic, our leadership team recognized the demand virtual meetings imposed on all of us daily and made the decision to suspend meetings until we could meet again in person. I'm happy to announce that the Calgary BIM community will commence in-person meetings again in 2023. Please visit our website at cbimc.ca to learn more about our organization.
The Winnipeg BIM community aims to be a nexus of BIM expertise in Winnipeg and the surrounding regions. We host events where local experts share their knowledge and expertise in BIM and help form connections with other local BIM users. We focus on finding local presenters and content to help differentiate ourselves from the plethora of online BIM information and resources, providing a local context for discussion and collaboration. Through this, we help promote the BIM process, discuss its use, and ultimately help everyone work better together through BIM. We also aim to act as a resource for local professional organizations, connecting them with individuals who can provide their membership with BIM events tailored to their membership's needs. To date, this has included the Government of Manitoba, the Mechanical Contractors Association of Manitoba, the Professional Interior Designers Institute of Manitoba, the Winnipeg Construction Association, and the Young Construction Leaders of Manitoba.
Hi, we're the Saskatchewan BIM Council, locally known as SaskBIM. SaskBIM exists to connect members of Saskatchewan's AECOO industry that share a common interest in building information modeling, integrated project delivery, and sustainable design. SaskBIM welcomes anyone with a passion for digital delivery and the application of emerging or innovative technologies from all AEC disciplines. SaskBIM is comprised of the Regina BIM community and the Saskatoon BIM community, with members from across the province participating in meetings and events. SaskBIM hosts meetings, including presentations from SaskBIM members, vendors, and AECOO industry professionals. Pre-pandemic, we had several social events and conferences. We have also provided assistance to government and private organizations with developing their BIM project standards. To join SaskBIM, or for more information about us and our events, please check out our website at saskbim.ca.
The Toronto BIM community officially launched in 2017. Today, we have a community of over 700 members across the Greater Toronto Area and across all sectors of the industry. Since the start of TBIMC, it has been especially important to connect all sectors of the AECOO as well as the academic sector to work through the challenges this digital transformation has presented. We have been pleased to offer so many opportunities to have local leaders share, debate, and question workflows, technology, and ideas to resolve these common issues. Our events have included topics on contracts, BIM execution plans, new roles, the value of BIM, digital fabrication, reality capture, virtual reality, and our most important event on BIM and e-permitting, with nearly 400 attendees and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing as the keynote speaker. TBIMC, in collaboration with the University of Toronto and buildingSMART Canada, helped to lead the National BIM survey and report, providing insights about implementation of BIM and technology in Canada. We are planning many new and exciting events, as well as new projects and collaborations for 2023. If you are in the Toronto area, visit tbimc.ca to learn more.
Hi, I'm Kirk Salke, Executive Director of Digital Built National Capital Region, better known as DBNCR. The National Capital Region of Canada is home to many connections. It connects the provinces of Quebec and Ontario and the cities of Ottawa and Gatineau. Through its ample green space, it connects nature to urban living. And as the capital, it connects the federal government to the citizens of Canada. DBNCR aims to connect those who build our region's infrastructure and promote the use of technology, design, construction, and operations. By sharing local knowledge and innovation, we have built a strong community of industry leaders who are at the forefront of digitalization. As a member of buildingSMART Canada's affiliate program, we're also directly linked to the other regions in Canada, which has led to multiple partnerships and events. This program is critical in aligning Canada in the common goal of improving how our infrastructure is developed and maintained. We have also expanded our connections globally, hosting events with contributors from Nigeria, South Africa, the Netherlands, and the United States. These connections provide the benefit of learning from global leaders and provide a broader context to our members. Further, it allows us to highlight the incredible work and research being done in the NCR. DBNCR is also a proud supporter and partner to multiple initiatives, such as the OneOntario project, which aims to digitalize the permitting process for all municipalities in Ontario. Further, we are a strong proponent of university research, partnering on projects like Carleton University's Imagining Canada's Digital Twin, led by the Carleton Immersive Media Studio in Ottawa. At DBNCR, we believe in the power of connecting technology to the built environment, and we continue to work to leverage that connection to create a more equitable, sustainable, and healthy region. Thank you to buildingSMART International, buildingSMART Canada, and Group BIM Quebec for hosting this event and inviting us. We look forward to meeting other industry leaders from around the world. Thank you.
So I'd just like to thank all the affiliates for their contribution to that and for the content. Things that we're looking forward to this year are a shared event calendar. So we're proposing to put all the events of all the affiliates into one calendar so you can see what's happening across the nation. Possibly some hybrid joint events so that affiliate members can attend events in other regions. I think that'd be interesting. Communication to provide international and national updates from buildingSMART Canada. And finally, strengthen the network between affiliate groups and create new affiliate groups in regions where we think that's required. So reach out to your local group and get involved. It's an exciting time for sure. Bill?
Great, thanks. Well, I'm really excited because when the AV person put the mic on me earlier today before this presentation, they assured me as long as I didn't touch the microphone, whatever I say will sound perfect. So I have high expectations. Nonetheless, I wanted to talk about our certification program. I think as you've probably been through the last couple of days, you realize that skills are really important to the success of project delivery. And it's very difficult to, as a practitioner, demonstrate your skill ability to your employers, to clients, to your colleagues, or for those that are staffing projects to know they have a skilled team to be able to deliver the work. So buildingSMART International, known for IFC, BCF, and a flourishing open BIM community, is also delivering a certification program. Not sure if people are aware of that. So the program has over 10,000 people, certified professionals, open BIM professionals. The certification involves taking some taking some training courses by a provider and then challenging an online exam. And successful proponents will be awarded the certification. I'm excited to share with all of you that we're going to be in cooperation with our partner, Group BIM de Quebec. We will be launching this program within Canada in 2023. And this will set a benchmark for international capabilities of people that are certified. You'll know that those that are certified have open BIM skill sets. And so we're very excited to be launching this program next year. We invite all of you to sort of learn more about the program. You can go to education.buildingsmart.org or our website, buildingsmartcanada.ca. So I think I'm going to give you some time back. Sheryl?
I can't believe it. Well, thank you to the buildingSMART group. for those updates. We're now going to shift gears and get into the panel discussion. We all have our assigned seating, so hopefully everyone was paying attention earlier. All we have to talk about is what's next for Canada, so that shouldn't be too hard to do in 28 minutes. I think we've had some great panel discussions today. For me, it's my third day of listening from an amazing array of experts. I've joked with others that it's a bit like drinking from the fire hose. There's been a ton of knowledge that's been shared. It's been incredibly inspiring to see what different organizations and governments have been doing. I was trying to think about what stood out for me, and I tried to write down some of these words that had jumped into my thinking. So leadership at multiple levels, value, who benefits, what are the use cases, contracts and procurement, digital thread, digital twins, ISO 19650, MALD was a new one for me. Model as a legal document was MALD. R&D was a new definition. What was it? Replicate and duplicate?
Rip off.
Rip off. Okay, so I didn't even get that one right, but that was a good one.
Replicate is more.
Replicate is probably a nicer way of saying it. Technology, process, people, mandates, requirements, chicken versus the egg, data, information management, interoperability. So those are all these different things that were being discussed. And so I asked the panelists to think on what's one takeaway that's really stood out for them over the past day or several days, depending on how long you've been here. So I was going to call on somebody, but maybe does anyone want to volunteer to go first to talk about their key takeaway? Or do I have to be a professor and actually just call someone out? Okay, Bill.
I'm happy to go. So as buildingSMART Canada have been serving as the evangelists for Open BIM for more than a decade. It goes back before that to the Institute for BIM in Canada, which is where buildingSMART Canada originated. And for us, we saw the value in Open BIM, particularly IFC. And I think through the last 3 days, it's been difficult to really convey to people the importance of Open BIM and the flexibility and quality and reliability that it provides. And in North America, particularly in Canada, we've had a series of vendors that have a kind of a market share, and we've worked with proprietary vendor-based file exchanges. I think, Cindy Baldwin, yes. She said it quite interestingly that Open BIM not only is for exchange, it's also for going back to older versions of models that have been created and not having to do a bunch of rework. So there's additional value in it. So to me, really, I think it's highlighting the importance of the open exchange format.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It definitely illustrated that. Does someone else want to go next?
I can go.
Okay, good. As I was looking at you, Claudia.
Is my mic on? Yeah, okay, great. So, there's a lot of good takeaways. I think one thing, I sat in one of the international rooms, which was a working session, and I think that there's, with the Open BIM, that there's a lot that we can learn from the other chapters, and there's just so much there that they've already worked through and they've uncovered, and there's just a lot of information that I think we have to unpack here in Canada. Just going, reiterating Bill's comment that we do tend to work more in proprietary tools, and I think the Open BIM education needs to increase here. So that's a task on us at buildingSMART to help with that. But I think that was the big takeaway. I think another takeaway I got was more an intangible one, which is I can feel an energy in Canada that something's going to happen. And so that just really, it was a very palpable experience the past couple of days that I think we're onto the brink of something.
Great. Thank you, Claudia. Steve?
I just wanted to pick up on that. I think my takeaway is optimism.
That
there's
I like it.
Some very very deep conversations that are happening. And I just hope that we can, again, bring them together, that we can start to open up communication. So as we already have with our institutions collaborating and optimism.
I love that. Yeah. Farzad?
So,
Oh, Steve?
I can talk like on behalf of like the decarbonization and life cycle assessment aspect. As I saw, like one of the challenges that is mentioned here is like how we can use this kind of like open BIM ecosystem in terms of like attaching it to what is called like life cycle environmental inventory. So in terms of like attaching them together and like making them like to talk together, it needs like the quiet identifying the standard method of naming convention for probably the materials, quantity takeoff or building orientation, and also like the right usage of like master specification, or like moving them towards digitalization. So this is something that I saw like this is a big value if we can like move towards that to make this interoperability happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and lots of evidence that it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Steve, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. I think key takeaway is just seeing owners and seeing the different levels of government really starting to get some traction and get involved with what's happening. And I think that makes a push for open BIM, since they want those digital assets at the end of the day. Then we really have to figure out how we transfer that data around from each stakeholder. And with a framework like ISO 19650, rip off and duplicate. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I was tremendously impressed with the examples of owners really taking the lead. And that does give me a lot of optimism and hope. Julie?
Speaking of owners and I guess just everybody getting involved and different people coming in, I've noticed that the community is growing in diversity. I was excited to see more women on stage, but I think that there's still a lot of change that needs to be required in our industry, and that should be highly addressed. And maybe with that, we can get all of those people on board and more IFC and open BIM and openness and collaboration and all the things that we want.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I've had multiple conversations about this with some folks, because we do have a long way to go to making this a fully diverse community. So thank you for that call to action. I'm the Associate Dean of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So if anyone wants advice, I'm happy to give it. Arash, do you want to go next?
Sure. I really enjoyed the chicken and egg kind of conversation.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy that we settled that. But almost like calling out on everybody, like, don't be a chicken, like now is the time, right? So like we have a momentum going now. I think this conference has helped kind of create that momentum in Canada. I think we had a really good representation here. Some lessons learned. I think we had some gaps in terms of government representation. I mean, Quebec was represented, but I think going forward, we're going to push others to come in. But it was good to have municipalities and provincial government and the federal government here. And I think it's up to us now, everybody in this room, to kind of push that momentum, make sure that momentum doesn't die, and actually make things happen. So that optimism that was kind of identified, I kind of feel the same way, that, you know what, maybe now is the time.
Yes.
All the stars are aligned. We can actually get it done.
If not now, then when? Yes. Perfect. Eric, last word.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with everybody. To me, it's the leadership. I mean, there's emerging leadership. We've seen well-established leadership in Canada. How do we channel that energy and that momentum? So my stress, or where I'm uneasy, is that after this event, it fizzles out.
Yeah.
And so how do we maintain that momentum? So I'm not worried about the province of Quebec. We have clear leadership. We have the roadmap. We have the SQI. We have the municipalities. We have a strong commitment. we're seeing a commitment emerge at the federal level, which is fantastic, with PSPC, with DND has long-standing leadership. Now we're seeing CSA emerge, Sarah, Jeff, and Laura and their group looking at standards. We're now seeing NRC step into a leadership role. buildingSMART, I think, has been around for a long time. I think buildingSMART has to take and assume more leadership as a not-for-profit, as somebody that's a neutral body trying to aim and articulate the different initiatives. And, with that leadership comes humility, I think, and it's to be able to work together and to, piggyback off the efforts and not, try to replicate or do our own little things. And I'm looking towards the Imagining Canada's Digital Twin. It's a fantastic initiative that I think we should, collectively get behind and support as a group of academics, as a group of industrials and everything. So, the pieces are there. Now, will we be able to get behind it and move things forward and build off of this momentum? So that's
Well, it's a great segue to my next question, because it is sort of like, how do we keep the momentum going? Right? What are the key actions, key next steps that we need to take? There are many tensions, government at multiple levels, some tremendous leadership. I've been amazed at what's happened in Quebec. Coming from BC, we have a long way to go. And so there are these tensions around how to really lead and coordinate and support these different initiatives. So when we think about continuing the momentum, and given that we need really government, academia, industry, all working together, how do we build that ecosystem? How do we amplify those synergies that we can create by working together? So I'll start with NRC maybe and buildingSMART first, and then we can hear from academia and industry after that. So if we're thinking about next steps, key next steps, and really keeping this momentum going, can you identify one or two actions that you see as important within your units or your disciplines? Farzad, you want to go first?
If you want my personal idea about this, I believe what is required next for what we are doing now is data. Like how we can get the data from the building in right format, how we can even use the existing data in terms of capturing the embodied carbon, creating environmental product declaration, make it regionalized for different Canadian regions, which is not existing yet. Some organizations, some associations has started this practice before, but this sentence continues with they are starting this, but they don't know in what format and what structure they should present this data, and they should digitalize it to be readable by machine and to be interpreted by digital ecosystems, and later on to capture what information we want to take from that data. So this is I believe the biggest challenge for us, to kind of to see what is the current practices out there from Europe, US, and trying to generate the inventory data for Canada, regionalize it, and also make it compatible with what is available in digital specific solutions like OpenBeam, IFC based, or the other exchange formats, but make it standard. To be able to present it to industry and to reflect it in our specifications and codes, to take it from there. And this is impossible with the help of academia, who are pioneers in this area, and even some big associations like buildingSMART, and then reflect it to the industry to validate this practice.
Yeah, so much more benchmarking, auditing, what's been done, what works, how can we rip off and duplicate and standardize from there and not reinvent the wheel on those kinds of things. Yeah, thanks for that. On the buildingSMART side, is anyone, Bill, you want to jump in?
I'd like to build off what Eric started with his comment. I think, we've had some success, I think quite success, with our Municipal Infrastructure Council. We created a framework to bring municipalities together to rally around what BIM means to that sector. And so, following the R&D concept, we can take that template and model for federal government and other stakeholders, and serve as a forum to have these important conversations to rationalize exactly what you're talking about, the details and the mechanics of how to not only do the exchanges, but how to implement them and how to practically see the value out of that. So I think we play an extremely important role going forward in creating that forum or environment to help shepherd, Canadians through this journey.
Claudia and Steve, do you want to add anything on the buildingSMART side in terms of specific actions that you can envision to keep this momentum going?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bill's comments. We need to create ways to bring people together, and in the right room, and to have these conversations, hash out the details. I think the other task is that we need to, create a frame, and help with the standards development and help the industry implement them. How and teach and provide guidance, around the implementation of standards and the development of standards. Like the contract appendix. But we need. I think the second part of that is really everyone's help here. We our a limited group. We really need participation from everyone, and everyone here obviously has, I think, some value to bring to the table. And I think we should all not just look at the person next to us and say, they'll volunteer and they'll help and they'll comment, and really own it. And I think you'll get lots out of participating. But this is a joint effort by everyone, and the people that come to an event like this are the people that are really leading the charge. And I think that would be my call to action is that buildingSMART definitely has work to do and to guide and help and connect the dots, but really we need participation from everyone.
Yeah. Arash?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. I was just going to build on that. I think we are at the point that we can start asking some hard questions, right? There's no reason for us to reconfigure this or reinvent the wheel, right? We are the only G20 country without a national BIM mandate. I mean, let that sink for a second, right? Why? And we've asked that question, and the answer I've got, well, we don't want to do it. Well, who doesn't want to do it? Like, can we sit in front of whoever makes decisions for this country and then decide why are we the only country, right? We wrote a paper on this when I was at U of T, and because it was academia, we called it a middle out approach. So every other country has a top down approach, including UK, but we have a middle out approach. What that really meant is that lack of leadership. Yeah. I mean, I think we're at the point that we can start calling out the leadership and say, you know what, why do we not have federal support, right? Why do we not have provincial support in a specific provinces? And I think we're at that point that we should ask, and maybe I put that on buildingSMART because you're the entity that represents us, right? Can we start having that dialogue and ask these questions and say, why not? Why can we not get a support? How long does the industry need to invest in tools, right? And have to print on paper and submit to municipality? I mean, like how do you justify that, right? And I think another thing that I want to highlight is I think what the work that Gord is doing in the MIC Council, Municipal Infrastructure Council, is going to be key. We did a lot of research, and Sheryl, you're aware of that, in terms of what BIM can do for the industry. So we had like drones flying through construction sites and updating the 4D BIM and all this fantastic stuff, right? There's a lot of resistance on BIM, right? And the one time that we asked the industry, what if we can get a faster permit, right? They're like, oh, What is BIM again? Can you talk about this? Like that's the one area that the industry is willing to invest if we can start delivering value. So we got to ask those questions to our municipalities. Why do I have to print, whether it's PDF or paper? Why can't you take advantage of the work that I've done and process that permit faster? Right. Yeah. So I think we're at the point, we couldn't talk about this, and it has to be a middle-out approach. But I mean, we're at the point now with the momentum that we have that I think we can ask those hard questions, right? Yeah. We expect, because it's not like they're not spending money. I mean, we've had some recent news on how money is being spent on apps and whatnot. So I think there's money to be spent, right? So I think it's now up to us to demand from our government to put the infrastructure in place so the investments the industry has made on technology can actually be utilized. So
thank you. No, that was a very strong call to action.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think we're seeing movement. So with PSPC and the federal, I think one thing that we laid it out in the CSA report is the complexity of how Canada operates, from a construction perspective, provincial jurisdiction for construction. So setting the rules, this notion of a mandate, which is very similar to the US, where we don't have a central government. So we need a sort of a system of mandates. We're in the system of systems discussion. And those have to be harmonized and they have to be coherent. And so establishing that framework, agreeing on the framework, we have notions of maybe ISO 9650 is a good one. Maybe there are others, but sort of, and that comes back to that slide, let's agree on the rules of the game, and we can then compete on the game, in the game itself. But that's one thing, maybe a conversation that's lacking is that conversation about, okay, what is the framework? And we do put it forward in the CSA report. It's one perspective. There are other perspectives that I think are valid. But again, I think the pieces of the puzzles are there. One other thing I wanted to say is also the affiliate network, and that's one thing when buildingSMART, when we set out the affiliate network, was we understand that replicate not replicate the complexity, hear me well, but to align with the complexity of the Canadian industry. And so, everybody has a role to play. Everybody should be joined within an affiliate. And if it's through that affiliate network, and one thing I have to highlight is this summit would have never been possible without le groupe BIMS Québec, Martin Lafleur and Pauline Mal, who contributed significantly, and the relationship between the groupe BIMS Québec, the Quebec Infrastructure, Société québécoise d'infrastructure, the roadmap, and the Ministry of Economy, the Ministère de l'Économie et de l'Innovation, that have supported a local affiliate in fulfilling this digital transformation mission. So if we can replicate that system across the country and have affiliates on a provincial level that have support at the provincial level, and then have an organization at the federal level that's supported at the federal level, then we can start getting that synergy. And as long as we agree on the rules of the games, we can have identity, we can have affiliates with their own identities, we can have them. But again, I think the four elements that were set out are fantastic because they set the rules of the game. But again, each flavor, each province is different, each municipality is different. But then again, it's getting this multi-layered framework together. And Quebec has put that in place, and I think can act as a model for the rest of Canada. And so I'm saying this from a completely conflict of interest perspective. I'm completely biased, but we did it here, so I think we should try to export that model. And maybe I'm wrong, but.
Bill? Yeah, just if I could add, today, the gentleman from Bexel that did the presentation was speaking about the need for mandate. And he used the example of a cell phone. Nobody tells us we have to have a cell phone. It's a choice we make because we recognize the value it brings. And I think, we could be waiting for long periods of time for a system of mandates to appear. I think what we need is to really celebrate the case studies of Canadian success stories on this BIM journey, because that's what's going to convince people that there's value in this. And that to me is more powerful than someone mandating that we do it a certain way. We need the funding, but I know, Arash, well, that's Coiled Spring. We need the funding, absolutely. But I think with a combination of case studies that show the value, it should be a pretty compelling argument for government to recognize this is something that's needed.
If I may just take facilitators' privileges here and just jump in a sec, because this was going to be my next question, was around investment. And coming from the U.S. and seeing the investment in General Services Administration right away to, for the BIM initiative in the U.S. back in 2007, and massive investments there in the UK, massive investments, and then being in Canada and seeing basically volunteer organizations trying to drive this. Right? And then Quebec, so far ahead now because of a lot of hard work, but an investment, significant investment. So I just want to really emphasize the importance of that and not seeing a lot of that in my 20-year period here in Canada. Sorry, Arash, go ahead.
No, you just said everything I wanted to say. I mean, nobody wants to be told what to do. So when we talk about mandate, we're really talking about the support that has to come with the mandate, right? And that's maybe part of the reason they don't want to do the mandate, I don't know. But in the UK, the mandate came, and then came hundreds of millions of dollars of support money to support everybody to comply with the mandate. So we're not asking for a mandate for the sake of being told what to do. We're asking for support. So thank you for putting it that way. And I think one more thing I want to add is the academic community could really push us forward, right? So if you don't want to fund the private sector, fine, but fund the academic sector at least, right? Let them lead the way. Because I think on this panel right here, I think you have everything you need in terms of being able to push all these standards and everything else that we need to put in place. So I think that's one thing I think that collectively we can agree on, that at least the academic sector could kind of help us push forward.
I appreciate that. Julie?
Well, I was going to say, in many ways we are. Like, we're lucky to have grants that fund high risk, high reward research. We don't know where it's going to go, and allowing us to explore that and then pool together and also involve many other disciplines within academia, and that continued collaboration. Oh, I hate you saying that word so much, but it's working, and because people are continuing to be curious and I guess giving permission to contact us or contact the lab. It's cool to see how many different projects come in with private sector, with government funding, with people who just have ideas and they want to know what we can do or are curious about our work. And I think that is the start of it being all of this kind of happening. It feels like it is, but more of it's always welcome. And, more money for academia is also always welcome.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, Stephen, you definitely have to respond.
There is an upper tier in the New Frontiers in Research Fund, which is $25 million over 7 years. We could build a lot of open BIM for $25 million. And so, again, our invitation is honest and wholehearted. We don't want to own Canada's national digital twin. We want to build it in collaboration with everyone in this room. So please, let's talk.
Okay, so you heard it here. Stephen is going to be the PI on the $25 million grant application.
I'll eat that one, yes.
So I think we're about out of time. If you'd all help me in thanking this amazing panel discussion. And we can just sit tight. We're going to give Eric the last word on the wrapping up of the...
Should I get up or should I sit down?
Whatever you feel like
I'll get
doing.
up, but,
well, maybe should we? Okay.
I'll invite you off the stage.
Okay, good. We'll
and
leave.
thank you very much. Thank you so much, Sheryl, for stepping up and doing a wonderful job moderating. Thank you, Sheryl. So you see, I mean, the discussion has only begun. I think this whole question about a mandate, provinces and the government as an asset owner is looking to use these tools and technologies to actually, create value and maintain their assets. So they're going to have to ask for this, and I don't know if that's not a mandate. I don't know what is. So we'll have a discussion during the gala, Bill. So this is, we're at the end of the national conference. I'd like to thank wholeheartedly everybody that has attended and stuck through these 2 days, the people that were with us since the very beginning of the summit. Je dois absolument remercier le groupe BIM du Québec, Martin, Pauline, pour votre travail, le OPC, Martin Drolet, Marie-Hélène, Jamie Lee et l'équipe qui ont fait un travail fantastique là, pour nous aider, pour tout mettre ça en œuvre. Vraiment, merci beaucoup. And I have to thank buildingSMART International, of course, for, again, accepting or allowing us to host this. The idea, like I said at the beginning, was to provoke a conversation. I think that's what we managed to do. Like I said, I hope the momentum, we build on this momentum. So for people that are registered, there's the gala dinner tonight at 6:30. So we'll hope to see you there. For the people that aren't, I hope to see you again soon. We're looking at, shall we do this again next year? We'll see. It's a lot of work. Reach out to your local affiliates, become part of it, become part of buildingSMART Canada. The invitation is there. And thank you so much. Merci beaucoup pour tout.